Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, and thank you for attending tonight's forum for candidates running for mayor and city council. I am Jean Bevavino, president of the South Haven affiliate of the American Association of University Women, AAUW. Thank you. The forum builds upon AAUW's more than 130 years of responsible public participation. We are a nonpartisan, issue-oriented organization. We do not support or endorse candidates. Our national and state priorities include support for government agencies administering programs, including adequate appropriations, effective and accountable administration, and provision for citizen participation. We advocate public discussion to ensure enlightened decisions. Locally, AAUW South Haven pursues its mission of advancing equity for women and girls through advocacy, education, philanthropy, and research. We raise funds through our annual book sale to help young women pursue their higher education goals. We attend school board meetings. We monitor legislation on education and health issues and communicate with our state and national legislators. We register new voters and conduct candidate forums. We support financial and personal support for youngsters to achieve literacies. We are a busy bunch. Our moderator for this evening's forum is Dr. Melinda Gruber, an AAUW member for over 20 years. Melinda is Vice President of Continued Care at Spectrum Health Lakeland and President of Caring Circle, formerly Hospice at Home. She has extensive experience serving in leadership positions at the local, state, and national levels. Most recently, she completed a Health and Aging Fellowship through Columbia University, as well as a federal congressional fellowship through the American Political Science Association. Please welcome Dr. Melinda Gruber.
All right. Thank you, Jean, very much for the wonderful introduction. And thank you to the South Haven American Association of University Women for hosting tonight's event. I'd also like to thank Lake Michigan College for the use of its facilities. I'd like to thank Dick Brunven for recording tonight for the League of Women Voters. Amy Nichols for being the public policy chair and hosting this evening on our Zoom event. And last I heard, we had double digits in terms of attendees online. 26, very good. And also Judy Pollack, who is the event chair. And a special thank you to you, the members of the audience, both in person and virtual, who understand the importance of being informed and of voting. So to be transparent, my family has a history of service to the city of South Haven. I served on the Parks Commission for a number of years. My husband Clark has served on several commissions, boards, and city council. He currently serves on the Planning Commission. And my son Griffin Graham is employed as the South Haven City Assistant Manager. So with that, thank you candidates for your willingness to serve and to run for office as council members or as mayor. So now let's take a few minutes to go over the format for this evening. First, to keep everyone safe, the candidates are spaced sort of apart and are wearing masks when they're not speaking. There's hand sanitizer for each person to use before and after touching their masks, and speakers are asked to wipe the microphone before and after using it. Because I am speaking throughout the forum, I won't be wearing my mask, but I'm even farther apart from everyone. So each candidate will be asked the same initial question as their opening, followed by questions submitted by local citizens. And we already have a number of questions that have been submitted through email. Opening statements are not to exceed 2 minutes, and answers to the following questions will be no longer than 1.5 minutes. Candidates are asked to stay focused on the question that's asked. And you can also choose to pass if you don't want to answer the question. We will conclude this evening's session with each candidate having an opportunity for a final statement not to exceed 2 minutes. So our timekeeper is Julie Levitt, and she will keep track of the time by raising cards when there are 30 seconds left, followed by a stop card afterwards. So thank you for raising those so everyone can see them. Question cards have been distributed as people walked in, and there will also be volunteers who have them and can pass them out and collect them. So can you raise your hand, volunteers, so people see you? So if you do need a card, you can just raise your hand, and a volunteer will send one to you. And then when you need them picked up, you can also raise your hand and they'll pick them up. We have also taken, as I said, questions from email ahead of time, and we'll be taking questions online during this event. Questions will be grouped into categories to eliminate duplicates and to ensure the topics of most predominant concern are asked. The questions will be brought up to me, and I will read them. There will be times when questions will be directed to all the candidates on stage, and there may be an occasion where there may be a question that's directed only to certain candidates or for a specific office. Personal questions or attacks will not be acknowledged. And if your question is not asked during the forum, which is likely for many because I already have a number of questions from the online group, or from the email group, you will have the opportunity to talk with candidates afterwards. So I really encourage you to stay afterwards and meet the candidates. Please no cameras or taping beyond the taping that we already have going on. And at this point, please kindly silence all electronic devices. The candidates are seated alphabetically by position and ward, beginning with our candidates for mayor. So we have Mr. Ahmad Goodwin, and we have Mayor Scott Smith. And then over here for candidates for Ward 2, we have Cam Dawdry, and we have Wendy Onuki. As I said, both candidates for Ward 2. And then we have Joe Reeser, candidate for Ward 1, and George Sleeper, candidate for Ward 3. So candidates, when it's your turn to answer a question, you may stand up so that people in the back can both see you and hear you. So that's when you would take off your mask and use the microphone. You can stand up. And we are ready to get started. So as I said before, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening remarks to address the question. And the candidates had this question ahead of time, so they had the opportunity to prepare, which is, why would you make either a good mayor or a good city council representative for the city of South Haven? So we're going to go ahead and get started in order, and I'm going to ask Mr. Goodwin to start.
Greetings, everyone. I believe that I would make a good mayor because my heart is in what I'm doing, and I'll bring a level of transparency to the city in all aspects of it, from the city council to what I'll have going on and throughout the rest of programs and developments that we plan on doing. And also to have a listening ear to you all. I believe that it's important to listen to the needs and wants of those that live in the city and those that have been living here a long time, and hopefully new residents. And I'll take that and do it the best that we can in conjunction with the city council. And that's why I believe that I'll make a good mayor, because I truly believe in the city and that we can move forward, and I'll bring a fresh aspect and different ideas to the forefront that we've maybe never seen before. So that's why I believe that I will make a good mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mayor Smith.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So when asked about being, traits of a mayor, I had to ponder this a little bit, but I've had the privilege of being the mayor, so it's a little bit different. But if you were to ask me, one trait that I've found is essential is I'm quite optimistic every single day when I wake up. I think we live in a great community. I'm definitely a glass three-quarters full person. So I truly believe we live in a great community. We have wonderful people. We have wonderful physical attributes from the lake to trails. So every day as the mayor of this city, I never take that for granted. Experience is clearly important. I've had experience, 10 years as a city council member, 4 years as your mayor, working together with our partners, whether it be city council, we work together, local partners, chamber, township. We work with our county. We work with our state. We work with our federal officials. Next week we've got Senator Peters coming to town. So continue looking at chances of forging those partnerships is important. I think the willingness to listen. I'm fortunate I have a day job where I work at the hospital, so I get to talk about city stuff probably more than I should, but I do, which is fun. And again, back to experience, I've had the fun job of managing a high water crisis, COVID, kind of all in the midst of what was really a 2-year term. So I've got 30 seconds to hurry up. So anyway, you've got to work together. It's South Haven. It's a complex little town. The lake is complex. The mayor needs to be acutely aware of those issues that affect the lake. You be willing to give of your time. You need to make tough decisions even when you're going to be very unpopular. So change is good. So thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Daughtry.
Honestly, I think the best way to answer this question for me is to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running for a seat on city council. Simply put, like most moms would say, I'm running for my children. When they were little, we struggled financially. As a lot of people in our fair city are aware, it's not always easy to find good paying work in South Haven. I wasn't happy about it, but I had to go back to work full time when they were small. I applied for $9 an hour secretary jobs because honestly, that's what I thought that I was capable of doing until I met somebody who thought more of me. At that point, it occurred to me that if I was going to be spending 40 hours a week working, it had better be worth it, and I could make it worth it. So with 4 kids and working full time, my husband working full time, I went back to college in my 30s and got my degree at that point. And it's been paying off exponentially since then. I did this with 4 small children at home. I feel similarly motivated now by them as I run for a seat on city council. Now I'm looking at providing for them differently, though. By working with the rest of our council, our city staff, our broader community, I aim to make sure that our children and your children and our grandchildren have a place that they can come home to once they're ready to raise their own families. I aim to make sure that they have a place that they can afford to live and that there are opportunities for them and that they are proud of what we continue to build on in this community.
Ms. Onuki.
Hi. I wanted to say thank you for having me here tonight. I believe that I would be the best choice for City Council in Ward 2 because I will always put the needs of residents first. We as a city have some big issues to tackle, and I would bring fresh ideas and an unwavering commitment to finding solutions. South Haven, as is mentioned before, is such a wonderful place to live, but I think the path that we're on right now is not completely sustainable. Our population is falling, affordable housing is scarce, and many year-round residents feel unheard at City Hall. I think this has to change. So I believe that we need to seek a path that would focus less on tourism and more on our year-round community, that we can do more to be a welcome and inclusive community, an equitable city, and I think it's really important to serve with open communication, transparency, and accountability. So I've been involved in community service my entire adult life. I love to give back in any way that I can. And I like to make things better instead of complaining about them. So I've served on the Parks Commission for several years. I don't know exactly how long, maybe 4, 5. And I'm a part of the Diversity Coalition in South Haven. I volunteer at the animal shelters and do a lot of other things in the community. And I also like to teach my daughters and and lead by example, that they can make a positive impact on their communities. So I'm fully committed to serving our beautiful city and making it an even better place to live. I would be honored to serve on behalf of the residents of Ward 2. Thank you.
And Mr. Reeser.
All right, 3.5 years ago when I ran for city council, I made a commitment to this community, and I said the residents will come first. And what I meant by that is every time I come up with an idea, every time I vote on city council, I will vote for what's best for the residents, not what's best for a small interest groups in our town, not for the people that have been privileged in this town to have a lot of control. I've always wanted to give it back to the people, and I've tried to live by that, and I think I have. Secondly, city council people should come in prepared. They should read the documents. They should know what they're talking about. Right now, a big issue is Overton development. There is not a week, and sometimes not a day that goes by, that I don't talk to the city manager, the city mayor, or the consultant, or Habitat themselves, a developer, and find out all about what it's like to have a development and what is best for this community. I'm learning, just like a lot of residents are learning, and as the mayor is learning, what's best. So preparation is the key right now on complicated issues like Overton. I have represented all parts of the city. I made a commitment, mostly to myself, that I would spend time in the southern part of Ward 1, where the people there have not been represented, do not feel like they have a voice, and have been disenfranchised. So I have gone out of my way to meet all the black pastors, the leaders, so I understand their needs. Next thing, I have been very open about my views. I've been recently, actually criticized for asking people to come to city council. And when I gave my views on Overton, I was told I shouldn't give my views. Nothing is worse than a politician that you have to guess what their views are on an issue. And lastly, I try to look at both sides of an issue. And there was an issue that came up with pushing the Overton site back a couple of months. I was really upset, but they convinced me at city council we should do it. So I can change very quickly. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think it's all right.
And Mr. Sleeper.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the South Haven chapter of AAUW and all those that organize this candidate organization, and our local chapter is a valuable asset to our community, so thank you all for that. One way I feel I would make a good member of City Council is my experience. I'm a 38-year resident of South Haven, which gives me a lot of history I can draw upon when making decisions. I have lived in 2 different areas of Ward 3, which has given me a unique perspective on the area I serve. I also, having been on City Council for 4 years, it's taught me a lot about the job of City Council, especially during the last 4 years when the city has faced some unique challenges. I have been a member of the Liberty Hyde Bailey Board, the Board of Public Utilities, and the Planning Commission, all of which has given me a more useful experience, again, to draw upon. I have participated in various training opportunities to improve my knowledge of the office. I've also been involved with the Michigan Municipal League subcommittee, and this has allowed me to meet with leaders in other communities throughout the state and also learn from them. Another way I feel I can continue to do a good job on City Council is the tendency I have to seek opportunities to meet with members of the community to get their views on the issues. I try not only to meet with and listen to those that think like me, but also those that think differently from me, because I think the diverse viewpoints that you get is one way to grow one's perspective and improve my representation. My education background is I'm an engineer, so be careful if you ask me a question. You may be there for a while getting the answer. Thank you.
So tonight we have a lot of precautions in place to keep people healthy, given that we are in the middle of a pandemic. So we will go to our first question related to COVID-19. When I ask people to answer this question, I have a method to my madness. I try to give everyone the opportunity to be the first speaker. So I will let you know the order after I ask the question. So this question is for all, and the question is, should the council and the mayor promote citizens being vaccinated? Should they consider requiring a vaccination for indoor activities like concerts and outdoor dining? So, Mayor Smith, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Mr. Goodwin, and then we will kind of do the reverse of who started first in each area over here. So, Mayor Smith. It's 90 seconds, yes, a minute and a half you have to answer.
Gotcha.
And you don't have to fill the whole time.
I'm all good with that. So I have already been, I'll plead guilty. I have been encouraging people to get the COVID-19 shot. Yesterday I had a patient come in who I actually walked to get their first shot. So if one thing I've learned in this whole process is that maybe we as a country should not combine politics with medicine, and maybe we'll learn that at a future date. But yes, we should encourage the vaccines. They're safe. It's science, not fiction. Relative to indoor mask mandates and whatnot, I would definitely defer to the county health commissioner first. But I mean, if numbers were to go up and it were to become essential, I'm not against, having those discussions with the Council of Seven if it's what's best for this community.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Mr. Goodwin.
Likewise, like the mayor said, I do believe that people should take the vaccine shot, but if they don't, I won't jump on their necks or jump on their back, because I think people should still try to be safe and use their own discretion. For those that may not want to take the vaccine because of other reasons, because when you see one of your loved ones get sick or someone pass away from COVID-19, the reality really hits home and makes you feel some kind of way that your heart goes out to people should want to take the vaccine. But if they don't, you just try to be safe and do what we know is right and just use good sense.
Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Onuki first.
Okay. I'm pretty much going to echo what they've said about encouraging them on an individual level, and maybe there is something that the city can do to encourage, but I think mandating, unless it was coming from the county health department, would possibly be not optimal. But I think educating and promoting an end to this pandemic would be really great. And personally, I think it would be good to have some indoor events that were requiring vaccines, proof of vaccination, or negative test results. And perhaps the more that we do things like that, the more people will want to get back to normal life. So that's my take.
Thank you. And Ms. Daughtry.
I believe in personal autonomy. I believe in personal choice. And I believe I could not possibly understand everything that everybody's factoring in when making that own decision for that decision for themselves. I personally am allergic to 2 of the vaccines, and it would be something that would mitigate my opportunity to get that. But I work very hard to keep myself safe because that's my job to do that. I keep my children safe because that's my job to do that. And I wouldn't assume that anybody else wouldn't be taking every precaution that they possibly could to keep their own selves and their families safe as well. So I think we put the information out there, we follow the data, we understand what that data is relative to, truly understand the sources of the data, and go from there. Support and encourage, but understand that it's a personal choice for everyone.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mr. Sleeper.
So I think related to the COVID-19 vaccine and protocols, we need to follow the science, and we need to make sure that we're listening to the experts and taking their advice and doing what we can to help minimize the threat to other people. It just so happens that this past weekend in another community, I ate in a restaurant, and it was the first time I had to show proof of vaccination to be able to eat indoors, and for some reason it gave me a little bit extra confidence that I was, someplace that, was maybe a little bit safer. But so yeah, follow the science. Unfortunately, I think the state has a lot more leverage in this area than the city does, but I know the city can also do a lot also. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Reeser?
The difficulty with this whole issue is not what I think, because I think the scientists and the doctors are right, get the vaccine I have. What it comes down to is personal rights. And here's the issue. Where do personal rights end and the rights and the privileges for the community? If we are putting people at risk by not getting vaccinated, then you should get vaccinated. Real simple. You can't get on an airplane. You have to give up personal rights, and you get inspected, and you get frisked, and everything else. It's not fun, but we give up certain personal rights. In the case of COVID, we have to give up some rights, and that means vaccinated. But the point was well made. If you have medical issues, there's a reason not to get the shot, then don't, and take every possible precaution. The other one is follow the government, follow the scientists. What they tell us to do in the city, we should do. Personally, I think, yeah, we should wear masks when we're in public places like this and any place else. Take every precaution. We got to stop this thing. But again, personal rights, and when it comes to the public rights for good health. Thanks.
Thank you. We are going to move on to a question that was submitted by email. And this question, actually, there's a couple questions around current housing issues in the community. So I'm going to try to put these questions together. What do you see as current issues as a city council mayor, as a member of city council or as the mayor? What do you see as the issues, your role in addressing those issues, and how South Haven accommodates the missing middle income levels in homes? So with that, we will start with Ms. Daughtry.
This is undoubtedly one of the biggest hot button issues, and something that is unbelievably important right now. Important to me personally, because I've been in this position. If my husband hadn't been as chatty as he always is, we wouldn't have lucked our way into the house that we're in right now. We found a house that suits our family and suited our budget because we knew people. That's not a fair expectation for everybody else. But there were a lot of factors that drove the situation that we're in right now, which means it's not a simple fix. It's going to take a lot of communication. It's going to take a lot of community input, and it's going to take a multifaceted approach. This needs to be part of a robust conversation that doesn't just call to the forefront rental rates or real estate prices, but encourages us also to dig into other factors that drive up the cost of living in South Haven, such as utilities and taxes, which I think there are opportunities there as well. That said, I'm happy to pay higher rates for both if it means that our city can afford to start investing in those who want to help address this issue. We are blessed to have many who can continue to invest in our community and who are interested in helping, and I think it's time we bring them in and have conversations with them as well.
Thank you. And Ms. Onuki.
So I agree with Cam that this is one of the most important issues that our town is facing, and that the solution for it is complicated and will probably take many different layers for an approach. But I also think it overlaps with a few key issues, including short-term rentals and tourism. I think by focusing on tourism in the past, we've allowing an incredibly high number of short-term rentals in our city limits. There are currently almost 600, I believe. So we have both a lack of inventory and high prices that are unattainable for most people, including that missing middle. So I think some of the solutions could be multifamily apartments and complexes, such as that at the Overton project. condos, townhomes. We could modernize our zoning ordinances so that we allow for more duplexes and triplexes, in-law cottages, and more modern things like that that I believe are currently prohibited in most places. And also having fewer short-term rentals in our neighborhoods. So a lack of affordable housing has a huge impact on our economy, jobs, schools, access to healthcare, and I could go on. Our population's fallen by about 1,000 over the last 20 years. So the course that we're on is just not sustainable. We can all feel the effects right now, and we as a city absolutely need to solve this crisis.
Thank you. You can hand that right over to Mr. Reeser.
Of all the issues we can talk about tonight, this has got to be the most difficult, and this has got to be the one that is going to be the tipping point for this community. I can't overstate it. You are right, Wendy. Our population, when I ran for city council, actually before I ran for city council, was 6,300. When I ran for city council, it was 4,300. The census taken from last year, it's 3,900. This town will not exist as a year-round town at the rate we're dropping the population. And that's not a scare tactic, that's a wake-up tactic that we have to do something. We have an opportunity right now with Overton to put affordable housing in this community, that the missing middle, that lower income, not subsidized housing, but affordable housing for this community, so the third and fourth generation people that have lived here, their children can stay here. I can't tell you how many teachers can't live here. I can't tell you how many people that live in this town, and their kids can't live here because they can't afford it. We have to have affordable housing. We have to look at short-term rentals. Every time there's a short-term rental, that's one less house that a person can buy, that's one less year-round resident. I don't have an easy solution, but I know the city has got to tackle it. Thanks.
Mr. Sleeper.
This is not just a South Haven issue. This is statewide. This is nationwide. And this has been a problem that's been developing over many years. It's going to take many years to solve the problem, and it's got to do with the way zoning ordinances are written. And it's a very, as people have said, it's a very complicated problem. It's going to take a very lot of different things coming together for the solution. And I think we need to keep partnering with experts in the housing area, because frankly, the city does not have the expertise, I think, to adequately solve these problems. But we need to partner with experts, and we need to move forward. We need to listen to people as we're going through the process to make sure we're getting input and hitting the mark. The only thing I will mention is there's been a lot of talk about short-term rentals. Short-term rentals is an aspect of it, but I don't think it's the major aspect. A lot of the short-term rental houses are not going to be used for the kind of housing that we're looking for, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move over to our candidates for mayor with the same question and start with Mr. Goodwin.
Housing. Hot ticket item, as Ms. Doherty stated. But what I believe that would make the housing situation better is to make immediate impact is if we talk to those who have second and third properties. And if we gave them some sort of tax break, then they may be more apt to rent their houses long term. That's to make an immediate impact. We know that Overton property is still going to be a year or two out the way. Another solution would be if you took your own resources, if you could afford it, and bought another property to rent it out to someone. You know what? And for that reason, that's what I did. When I stepped away from the Housing Commission, I took all my resources to rehab a home to try to put somebody in it. I'm not finished yet, but that's the kind of guy I am. And that's what I believe the rest of the residents should try to do. And that's how you'll make an immediate impact. We won't be able to buy all the homes. We won't be able to do everything, but see what you can do your own self or pool your resources together with someone to make it happen.
Thank you. And Mayor Smith.
Thanks, sir. So the housing issue is complex, as we've said. The issue that I continue to hear over and over again, and I've seen, is just the ability for somebody to move in our community, just start here. Young professionals, we've talked about it before, teachers. I came here, I did like the American dream. I moved here, I was single. I've had a chance to start an apartment, move from ward to ward to ward. It's not possible right now. It's very difficult to find housing. So we need a place for people to start. So Overton is one piece of that puzzle. We're going to have to work with the township. I said earlier, there's kind of the blessing and the curse of Lake Michigan. It's fantastic. It's one of the biggest drivers of housing prices anywhere. So we can't fix that. And as long as Chicago's 2 hours away, we've got water in the lake, we will see elevated housing prices. So we have to figure out, one, not only how to create opportunities in places like Overton, work with the township, create opportunities there, then also, how do we get people to want to come here and move here? If we have any talk about rentals, it has to be coupled with what are we going to do to encourage people to come here? Because removing short-term rentals doesn't guarantee us people moving into this town. They'll likely backfill with second homeowners. So what makes people want to come here, live here, stay here? Schools, recreation, things to do. So there's a lot to think about.
Okay, thank you. We're going to keep on the subject of housing and move specifically to the Overton project. So I'm asking candidates to describe their position on the project. Questions that were asked included if you would be interested in reducing the proposed units for the project, if you would want to add more parking and green space, and how you would communicate to residents when the cleanup of the property would take place. So with that, we will start with Ms. Onuki.
Okay, I'll see if I can get those questions answered. I do support the Overton project. I think, as the mayor said, it's one piece of the puzzle for providing affordable housing for people. I think it's been a very long and thoughtful process so far, and that the city has been listening. When they chose Habitat to work with, they've showed that they will listen and change their ideas to reflect the community's input, which is really important. I think if we move forward in a thoughtful and transparent process, we could have a really great property over there with families, and I think there are green spaces there, and it connects to the trail. The park's right down the street from there. So it does have a lot to offer in that area. I'm not sure in regards to the reduced units and parking spaces if that's something that would be required. I know that the developer does need to have a certain amount of profit, which is why they've chosen the number that they've chosen. But I do believe that if you voice those concerns, and enough people are concerned about those things, that they would answer, hopefully in a way that's satisfactory to most people. And communicating regarding the cleanup, I think that would be really important for the city to do and stay on top of. And you could have that on our website and emails and the city newsletter posted at the site so that people know what's going on there. So, thank you.
Thank you, and you can pass it to Ms. Daughtry.
I remember to take my mask off this time. I do support, in general, development of the Overton site. I miss the traffic in the area, actually. That's a strange thing to say, but I grew up on Hazel Street, just 1 or 2 blocks away. So I remember, when my dad worked at Everett, I remember when Overton was there. In fact, my dad had an office in the Everett building at one time. So I do see how quiet it is and how nice it would be to be able to bring families back to such a gorgeous spot. Brownfield needs to be remediated appropriately. City needs to play an active role in doing that. That all said, I do support development of that if we adhere to what we need to adhere to from an oversight perspective. What continues to give me pause about this particular proposal, though, is the moving goal line, or the redefining of what we're actually trying to accomplish, what success would look like for the Overton development. In the city council's priorities, it specifically calls out addressing the missing middle, homes for the missing middle, and Overton as a way to do that. Missing middle is an easily defined range of salaries. And the latest information that I have anyways on the Overton project specifically is that we're looking at subsidized, that we're looking at lower income housing, which I'm all for too, if that's a need. If that's a need that we need to address beyond the communities that we already have, then I think that's a change in plan.
Thank you. And if you want to pass that down to Mr. Sleeper, please.
I also support the Overton project. As far as reduction of the number of units, more green space, more parking, I'm all for that if we can still maintain the overall goal of trying to keep the housing affordable. And I know that's a term that's, as is mentioned before, is not easily defined, but we need to make sure that we're providing housing for the target folks that we were looking at doing. I think that the city has tried to be transparent in this. They've developed a website to kind of specifically on Overton to try to help communicate around that. I think part of the process that we'll be going through is to, once it gets into Planning Commission, there'll be a remediation plan. It'll be very easy, I think, to communicate that once it's established. Thank you.
And Mr. Reeser.
It's almost, I don't know where to start. I think we all agree that affordable housing is needed. The price of homes have gone up. The supply of homes is going down, which drives up the prices. People need a place to live. And surely our children, especially the people who live in the Elkinburg area, third and fourth generation, they should be able to live in that area and not be priced out. So we all believe that there, and George said it, and many of us think Overton could be that solution. Yes, density has been questioned. I could read you the numbers here from the consultant. We are even better than what's required from affordable housing. We are better than what's required for parking. The contamination, yes, that should be a concern. The city is addressing it. They cannot put one brick on the ground until it passes MSHDA and passes all the EPA regulations. The bottom line is this: do we or do we not want to have affordable housing? Should we or should we not move forward? We can wrestle all the little details, and some of them are just small details, but the big picture is we're on the right path. Habitat has proven itself over and over and over again. We had 13 people in the community vote for them. I think we're on the right path. Please don't let it keep getting pushed back. Every day that goes by, another person who in the community can't move into this town, another teacher can't live here. So without getting any more specifics, I can't support it enough. Thanks.
Thank you. And now we're going to move over to the candidates for mayor, and we will start with Mayor Smith.
Hello. I think you specifically said parking density cleanup. So I'm supportive of Overton. Sorry, mask on, mask off. I do think there's still work to do. You're seeing it's now going to be going to the Planning Commission. So density will be further fleshed out by our Planning Commission. Parking, we've changed parking in the past, and if you've been to any of Ryan Kilpatrick's discussions, if you're going to look at getting creative with housing, making more affordable options, we've got to look at the way we set up our lots, parking, height. It all becomes a factor, and it has to be something we look at. Change is hard, but change is necessary sometimes. We have to look at it. I think we have to investigate all the options. So, like I said, we changed parking a few years ago downtown to encourage downtown dwelling, and we've seen an uptick in downtown residential units. So we've seen some positive things happen. On density, I think as we look at the units, it may change. There's still a little work to be done. Cleanup, yes, the brownfield's got to get done. The one thing I would say I've learned over time is we need to make sure it's clearly tied to all phases if it's done differently, because having been involved with the project across the street, I can't recall exactly all the details, so they need to be clearly tied to the ongoing project so there's no lapse. As councils change, city staff changes, so that's important to make sure that's in place.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Goodwin.
I think Mr. Reeser answered the question best, but I totally support the Overton property, the development. But this is one thing that I proposed in meetings in times past concerning the property to make it even more affordable. My suggestion was that we use high school kids to help build it up so they can learn the trade, with local contractors to help keep the price down, use with volunteers to help keep the price down so it won't be as expensive. And I thought that was another creative way to teach our young people a trade and to work as a community to make this thing happen. That's what I wanted to see done. But especially, the most important thing about this project is to make sure we ride those developers to make sure the property is absolutely cleaned up to a T. Ride them through every single phase, not only city council, but as residents. If you see anything wrong, if you have some knowledge on it, call in, tell somebody about it and what you see, because 20 and 30 years up the road, we don't want to see anybody suffering any sickness from this.
And now we are going to turn to the environment. And we have a couple questions. One question is around the number of trees that are cut down in South Haven for new construction, and what is the view of how this may be impacting climate change issues. Also, if you can address any comments around shoreline erosion and our beaches. And this question, we will start with Mr. Sleeper.
So one of the things that attracts a lot of people to South Haven is the lake and the environment that we live in. So it is something that's important to protect, not just for visitors, but for the residents. One thing that we need to do, and in fact, we just recently on City Council changed our zoning ordinance such that trees of a certain diameter, if they're planned on being cut down as part of a development, that has to be specifically called out in the plan for that particular development, which I think is beneficial. I've been to a number of workshops on Lakeshore, and I've learned a lot. And I know the city is continuing to pursue working with partners such as the state of Michigan and University of Michigan, Michigan State, to help find out how we can help protect the shoreline. And I know that's, being on Planning Commission, that's something that's very important that we look at a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Reeser.
I usually have strong opinions on most things, and this one's a tough one. I don't know that much about trees and the agriculture. I only know trees take in pollution and give us back oxygen, so I'm all for having every tree we can. What's the best solution? I'll leave it up to the experts. Beach erosion, I took several seminars with that, and the sad part that I learned was we can't stop it. We cannot stop Mother Nature. It's going to erode the beaches. Here's what we can do. We can stop allowing people to build homes hanging over the shoreline. It's not necessary. We can also pay more now to do something than push the can down the street and pay a whole lot more a few years from now. So whatever the experts tell us to try to curb erosion, we should do. I think I have the right word, abatement. That's when people build these structures out into the water to protect their beach from eroding. Guess what it does? It pushes the problem down to the next house. Then the next house does it, the next one does it. We've got to stop allowing that. But I think the problem is bigger than South Haven. This is one of those times we need the state to step in and do something. But I can't give you, because I don't know the solution. I just know it's difficult. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll start with Ms. Daughtry.
I agree a lot with a lot of what Mr. Reeser said. Somebody had posted on one of the chat groups on Facebook, and I think it actually got brought up at a city council meeting, this gorgeous picture of tree-lined streets in front of the post office. I want to say it was from the 60s. I grew up here, not in the 60s, but I grew up here, and I remember all the vegetation that we had. And honestly, I think the best way to protect the community, the best way to protect our shoreline is to stop interfering with our shoreline. Case in point, those houses hanging over the bluff. Who didn't see that issue coming from a mile away? We do defer to the experts. I imagine experts were involved in that, but it also takes some common sense. And growing up in this community, I think we are experts in our own right and understanding our shoreline. I've certainly seen over the 40 plus years that I've lived in South Haven changes. It comes and it goes, but again, not removing trees. I love the idea of not allowing people to cut down trees over a certain diameter for large developments, and staying out of the way of it, letting it take care of itself.
Thank you. And Ms. Onuki.
I love the idea too of not cutting down large trees and protecting our trees as much as possible. In my neighborhood, we actually had a tree cut down. They were expanding the road next to the ravine, and after the fact, we found out it was the largest, it might have been a hickory, I think, in the entire state, and it was just gone. So I think we should be thoughtful when we need to do things like that for development's sake. I think the environment doesn't get as much attention as it should or could. So I would love to see us planting more trees, native trees, a large variety, pollinator gardens, just having plenty of green spaces that enhance the environment and also beautify our town. As far as the shoreline erosion goes, that's also a huge issue, and we should do everything in our power to protect our shoreline. It's one of our biggest assets here. Joe is right. When people put up those rocks and other abatements, it just pushes the problem down the road and creates all sorts of problems for the city and unsuspecting neighbors, and I think we need to approach that in a really thoughtful manner. I saw a presentation that was about the topic of shoreline erosion and how much of it is a man-made problem and how much is just nature. And they did have some solutions that the city, I believe, looked at and can look at. So it's not a lost cause. We can work and we can make it better.
Thank you. We're going to move to our candidates for mayor, and Mr. Goodwin, please start.
The tree situation, I believe, just to deal with it if it's in a residential area first, is if it messes with your roof line or your foundation, then I am kind of for cutting the trees or doing some tree work then, if it's going to affect your home. Now, concerning the beach, I do have a question, because this is something I thought of many days. If you look at the South Beach, it's a lot of brush right along the beach, towards the top of the hill. If that was to be cut down or trimmed down, not the trees, all that brush and cleaned up, that would give you more beach, but would it affect the erosion is a thought. Because if the water levels keep coming up, and if we were able to cut that would give us more beach, at least on the South Beach, if it doesn't affect the water levels. But I would have to continue to do my homework and listen to the experts on that, and we.
Thank you. Mayor Smith.
On trees, we have a city arborist who's fantastic. So you've seen trees being replanted throughout our town. We should continue to do that. When it comes to trees on private property, as George mentioned, we are now pulling, as part of the planning process, having our arborists look at trees over a certain diameter, which I think is a step in the right direction. So I'm a tree pro that. I also know this is the USA and property rights get in the way sometimes. So there's a balancing act. Relative to shoreline erosion, the correct word is revetment, not abatement, just so you know. We have to continue to study, to learn. Senator Peters will be here next week. We're going to show him shoreline damage. We managed, we had a lot of issues relative to having to replace marinas over the last couple of years. You've seen there is no beach on the south side of town, no natural beach south of the public beach. There's a few factors, just a little tidbit. Pier structures tend to slow the flow of sand. That's one of the issues. Two, Mother Nature took a lot out in the high water. So will we be asking for money for beach nourishment? Yes. Do we have continued work with the University of Michigan? Michigan Tech was just here last week, did a presentation. We have to continue to look to them. They're the experts. Follow their lead, work with the township, and be smart with our lakeshore.
Thank you. We're going to cover one more topic before closing comments. And this last topic is around diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of the city's priorities is as follows. City leadership will seek to improve and enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within the city. So my questions to have you answer are, what specific actions would you see as evidence of improvement? And do you believe there is enough diversity amongst city officials? If not, how do you plan to make it more diverse? And we'll start with Mr. Reeser.
This one's near and dear to my heart. Do we have enough diversity in the city? No. Plain and simple, no. What most of you will never see from your city council persons is what they do behind the scenes. I, along with one of the pastors here in town, most of you know him, we did more than just ask. We actually went overboard in trying to get a black person or a person of color to work in City Hall and customer service. I think when people come to this town, they walk into City Hall, they should see people that reflect this town. 25 years, I've been told, we haven't had a person of color there. We pushed, and I have to say HR helped, and we finally had that happen. I think we need more of it. The big issue is, what kind of a town do we want to be? And the first starting point should be a mission statement. What does this city stand for? I've asked the mayor to help me. I said I'll finally do it myself. I have a social worker, wife teaches. I know the diversity manager in Kalamazoo. We could put our heads together. Let's at least tell ourselves and the public, what are we standing for as a community and where do we want to go? If we can take those two first steps, we'll be a long way to creating more diversity. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sleeper.
Having a community that is has diversity, equity, inclusion is just going to make that much of a stronger community. So we really need to focus on that. And I know that is one of the reasons why it's on our priority list as a city council. We do have our HR staff is aware of the diversity that we have or the lack of diversity we have in our staffing, and they have that as a priority. And I know the staff is working on trying to improve in that area. We do have some limitations because we are a governmental agency that limits, for example, quotas, but I know the HR staff will continue to focus on that, and I expect to see improvements in that area going forward.
Ms. Onuki.
To answer the question of if there's enough diversity in the city, I would say no. We need to do better in that area. it should be important for your representatives to reflect who you are. There's no way we can lead the whole city without the many voices that make up the city. So that would be really important. I believe that we can do so much as a city to make South Haven welcoming and inclusive and equitable. I know a group tried to have the city adopt a non-discrimination ordinance and it didn't go through. That would be something that could be really important. Some cities have done pride proclamations to welcome the LGBTQ community and show that they support them. I do think there's a lot that we can do. We can become more accessible to those with disabilities in the city. And I just think we really need to focus on diverse representation in City Hall and across all the boards, the council and the commissions. So I do believe we can develop partnerships with other entities in the city, including churches and organizations, and also work on achieving equity in such areas as healthcare, policing, education. There's a lot that we could do.
Thank you. Ms. Daughtry.
This is something I feel like I talk about every other day. I work in corporate America. I work for Whirlpool, which is a giant global company based out of Benton Harbor, if you're unaware. And diversity and inclusion is at the forefront of every town hall conversation, is at the forefront of every team meeting that we have. And something that they are actively pushing and something that I support. But here's where I'm at on it. I think there comes a point where we are as diverse as we want to be. We need to encourage people to become more active in the community, people of all colors, people of all sexual orientations, people of all religious backgrounds. I wouldn't want to assume that because somebody looks a certain way or loves somebody in particular that I understand who they are based on those physical characteristics or who they're interested in personally. And I think that's important to consider too. We need to focus on diversity of thought, diversity of experiences. Diversity comes in all shapes, colors, sizes, and not just relative to physical characteristics.
Thank you. And we'll turn to our candidates for mayor, and we'll start with Mayor Smith.
I will echo and agree with everything that's been said. I think we as a city can always do better in this area. We should. We've identified it as a priority, as was stated. Joe mentioned, rightly so, we've also been kind of, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll get this mission and vision done that will also kind of hopefully solidify kind of where we as a city feel we stand on a variety of issues, from housing to racial issues, you name it. So I think there's a lot of things we could take care of. As far as, I think you're seeing some action at City Hall. We've seen some hiring changes. We've seen some changes in the way we interview. We're making the process easier for people to apply. You can get on your phone and apply. It's more available at City Hall. You're seeing outreach amongst City Council, staff, participation in Black Lives Matter activities. And really, again, it's diversity of all sorts, as Cam just said, because I've been trying to recruit somebody of Hispanic background. I wouldn't have anybody on a board or commission at all, and I'd love to see a variety of backgrounds, because we are better as a community if we're more diverse.
Thank you. And Mr. Goodwin.
Do we have enough diversity in this city? Absolutely not. When we look across our city council, the jobs in the city hall, those on the school board, all the top jobs across the city is not diverse at all. When you have more diversity, you learn from one another. Those, as she said, with disabilities, those from different sexual orientations, we learn from each other when we are more diverse. And just to hit on the Black Lives Matter, when they had that rally, I'm the one who challenged them to do something at City Hall, because there were no representation of anyone of color down there. And a lot of people may seem like hiring one person is enough. To me, it's not. We need to do better as a city and as a community, because me growing up here, I had all types of friends, from all kind of different backgrounds. So we do better as a city when we're more diverse, and that's with our jobs, with raising our children, in our schools, because if you look around in our schools, a lot of the young people, they embrace all kinds of young people. And this is where the world is headed, with more diversity. And we need to start now and lead by example in South Haven. And I believe that we can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. So we're at the time where we're going to give each candidate 2 minutes for a closing statement. Just going to say, candidates, that there were a number of questions around economic development and improvement that we didn't have a chance to ask today. So if you have the opportunity to incorporate your position on that within your closing statement, that would be helpful for our audience. So we are going to go in the same order that we did our opening statements. So, Mr. Goodwin, I invite you to stand right back up.
My closing statement would be this. I'm here on today to get some more votes, to sit in the seat as mayor to bring fresh new ideas and perspective. One is I'd like to bring more recreational activities for our young people. I'd like to see something like the Gus Macker come back to town, for something for our young people to do, for some of our restaurants and things like that to stay open a little later. When you cruise through town on this summer at 9 o'clock, you couldn't even get a burger or a pizza. It was all shut down. We need to work together as a community on a lot of different issues, with housing, with jobs, and I believe if we promote this city, more people will come. I would like to find out, as your mayor, what land do we have available, what spaces, and to see what we can do with that land so we could develop it. Let's bring back the trades for our young people so we can barter and trade and get different ideas and structures built from our young people, our sons and our daughters, and that's what's going to give them the jobs and the educations that they need. I believe that we can do it. If I was to speak a little Spanish on tonight, it would be yo creo, I believe. I believe as a city and as a resident of South Haven, which is a great place, no other greater place that I would be is rather than be in South Haven. If we work together, and if you vote for me, I'll keep my word, and I will make change and continue to give a listening ear to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mayor Smith.
Development. Well, just first, thanks everybody for coming, for listening, for participating. Dr. Graham, thank you for moderating. To the community, just thanks for your support the last couple years. It's been an adventure with our pandemic and high water. We don't always agree, but we all agree to disagree. We want this town better. We want to grow. We want to prosper. It's critical. We continue to work together. Economic development. I've been in almost every business in this town. I have met with multiple employers. I've heard their needs. We continue to address those needs. Almost every single employer in this town is trying to add jobs, good paying jobs. Years back when I started this, it was we need jobs. Well, now we've got jobs. We just need people. So now we have to crack the nut of how do we work with the schools, LMC, the public schools. We've got to attract people here again. Housing is a piece of it. Things to do is a piece of it. So we have to work harder at trying to figure out how to fill our schools, fill our churches. We need people back in this community. So I think that's going to be one of our harder challenges. So I understand those challenges. I've been sitting in this seat for 4 years, and I look forward to continuing to work on these issues as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to our candidates for City Council and begin with Ms. Daughtry.
I will wrap up pretty similarly to how I started by telling you a little bit more about myself and what matters to me in this role as city council person. I'm a doer. I have strong work ethic. and strong time management skills, which means you can be sure I will have done my homework ahead of meetings, and that I'll be actively engaged in council meetings. I'm passionate about our community. Born and raised in South Haven, which brings a unique and I think much needed historical perspective on the community and what our struggles are and what our opportunities are. Project leadership. As I mentioned before, I work for a very large company, and working for that company has given me some unique experiences, I think, that would relate and suit me very nicely for this role. I've led many cross-functional and cross-regional projects, one I've been monitoring while we were here tonight, and understand the value in not just defining success, but also measuring against those expectations. And then, what's important to me as a council person? Keeping families in South Haven and bringing back others. Having employment for them, seasonal, blue collar, white collar, year round. Housing for the missing middle. Keeping residents and visitors safe and supporting local businesses. And I think the biggest issue for me, and this is the same thing that I would say to start, leading any new team at work, is transparency, which is something that you could always count on me for. I may open myself up to more than I care to hear at times, but you can be sure that while this city has my heart, you will always have my ear.
Thank you. Ms. Onoki.
So just to speak on the economy a little bit, I believe it's connected to tourism, jobs, and the short-term rental issue, because I just feel we need to really start prioritizing our year-round economy and community over tourism. And I think that's the best and most sustainable path forward. When businesses are looking at locations here, they need to find housing for their workers, and it's just almost an impossible task right now. So we're losing those opportunities to bring jobs here. We have almost no long-term rentals here, which again hurts the missing middle that we've talked about so much. If we can incentivize long-term rentals versus short-term rentals, I think that would go a long way in providing housing for workers of all types, families and seniors. And I think that we could attract new businesses, teachers, families, those who want to be here and that will be invested in our community. Maybe we can reverse the population decline that way, meaning more students in our schools, more year-round spending at our stores and restaurants, and less of an emphasis on tourism and the summer months. So that would attract the families that we need to come here. And I just wanted to say too that I feel really strongly about a lot of topics that we talked about today. We didn't get to everything that I thought we might. You can find my views on my website. You can always contact me. I'm happy to chat with you. And I just wanted everyone to know that even if we don't agree on everything all the time, I would definitely serve with your best interests in mind, and I would always put our neighbors first. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Reeser.
In conclusion, I think I'll just recap what I think are my priorities, which reflect a lot of them for City Council. Economic development. The mayor is really in touch with businesses in this town, and I've seen letters from employers saying, we need places for our employees to live. So if you're going to have economic development, you must have housing. To have housing, we have to have affordable housing, and we have to have controls of short-term rentals. We have more short-term rentals in this town than any other town up and down the whole lake. Sorry. The second thing with economic development is training our youth. We have to stress education. That's not just college. That is training skills for those who want to do blue-collar works like carpenters, electricians. We don't have enough. Try to get one. 2.5 years to have someone paint my front door. Provide more diversity. I criticize the city for not enough, but I'll say some nice things. Number one, Black Lives Matter March. I was amazed by the number of people that came out, and it was so positive. The recent prayer march led by black and white ministers and priests, everyone came together, and you could feel the harmony in the crowd. Ward 1 picnics. They're wonderful. People of all economic background, races, religions, they all come together, and we all have a good time. And it's friendly and fun. Here's the bottom line. When you go to bed tonight, and you're laying in bed thinking about who you want to represent you, here's what I would be most concerned about. Does that person care about me as an individual and as a community, regardless of their stand on any issue up here tonight? Do they care about me and my well-being? That I can tell you I care about, and that's why I think I could be good at this position again. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Sleeper.
Okay, first I want to thank all those that came in tonight, both in person and virtually, to ask questions and to listen. One thing I have found to be so rewarding being on City Council is the engagement of the community, and Councilmember Reeser kind of touched on this. When we talk about economic development, when we talk about housing, one of the key ways to fix those problems is to engage the community. And I've seen so many good examples. People willing to serve on and be candidates for elected office, people willing to serve on boards and commissions. It's a tough job to be on a board and commission a lot of times, and people are willing to do that. That kind of engagement is really what's going to serve us well in tackling any of the problems that we have. I'm just one person on City Council, but the efforts that come from the community are driven by the community. That is really what is going to be essential to solving many of our problems. And that was what's going to take South Haven from moving, that's going to keep South Haven moving forward and improving our city. I just want to say I also like this thing because I've always wanted to do one of these drop the mic.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sleeper. So, thank you, candidates, for your participation tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. And thank you, audience, for your interest. You may stay after to ask questions of the candidates if you didn't get them answered during this event. Also, I'd like to say thank you to Lake Michigan College for the use of the facilities, to our AAUW volunteers who are here tonight, Jody Pollock for chairing this event, Dick Brunveld for recording it for League of Women's Voters, Amy Nichols for hosting the Zoom event. So thank you, everyone, for attending tonight's forum in person or virtually, and most importantly, remember to vote. Thank you.